Twitter user Teamer22 is usually reporting on things mentioned in LinkedIn posts. So, open resumes of developers within different studios. And one that caught my attention was this one from a Bend Studios developer, game designer, who worked on multiple canceled / unannounced projects. Now, this has been, basically highlighted here. Not many has talked about this so far. We only were, aware when Ben canceled Days Gone's sequel or did not greenlight it. I don't really know the intricacies of that particular matter. And then I think there was also another live service God of War game. But projects like these could mean that they were maybe in their infancy stage. Maybe they were pitching them. Maybe they had pushed them into a phase of maybe developing a vertical slice. Or maybe they had gone past, and as they were looking at the market, they couldn't see any viability in that regard as to exactly where it is that, that game was going to fit in. But what's very interesting, though, is now, I think more than ever, older games are going to be the new front line in terms of these competitive branches in the gaming industry. And let me explain what I mean. What I mean is, right now, if you look at PlayStation and Xbox, they seem to be moving their games across platforms. What could be the driver? Well, the simple driver is it's money. In fact, just a second ago, I reported on a Teamer22 post, shout out to him, that he saw from another developer who talked about, they were working in Turn 10 Studios, and he talked about how, at the moment, he had worked on some, design features, some cross-platform design features that pushed Forza Horizon 5 to sell 2 million units in 1 month on PS5 alone. So he's highlighting his contribution in that regard. Now, the total sales of Forza Horizon 5 have been estimated to be around 3 million at the time Alinea Analytics, I can't even speak, got a hold of it. But having this official number and looking at what those sales look like, I calculated it to be around about $84 million after 70-30 splits are in order, if it's 70-30 or maybe if it's 80-20 after a certain amount of units sold. I don't know. Because you also got to look at the way Forza Horizon actually showed up on the PS Store. It also had a premium edition that was $100. So I just ran some random numbers. I did let's just do 1.8 million sold at the standard edition price, and then 200,000 sold at premium, and then you put your 20%, your 70-30. If that game doubles what it's actually sold and goes to about 4 or 5 million officially, you're looking at $160 million. So basically, an old game that Xbox has already basically made its money off of by selling on Xbox and PC has now basically made enough money to fund a different project when costs have been taken out of the equation. Now, I guarantee you they're going to also need to pay taxes and other fees. However, those costs are going to also go ahead and incentivize a tax break for them as well. So when you kind of think about it, PlayStation also stands to benefit this kind of money. Now, the crazy thing is, for the longest time, we heard this narrative that PlayStation sitting there and earning 30% was, the way to go. They're just sitting there, they're doing nothing, and they're making 30%. Do you all remember? I remember, because I had to deal with the brain rot that it was. Because, people will be like, oh yeah, they made 30% and they did nothing. And, which is a very silly claim. The 30% does add up for their, benefit and their profits. But if you think about the way they addressed their investors in their last investor call, they mentioned 3 major things that they were, or 4 major things that they were going to do to raise their profitability. Number 1 was operational excellence. I'm going to number them out of order. Number 2 was their price revision on their subscription on PS Plus and chasing monthly active users. Another one was getting their games off console as a whole. And then one of them was third-party games, right? So they will use third-party games, but here's the thing about third-party games. They're not guaranteed, right? For you, the third-party platform host. And your earnings from each third-party game is not as significant as your earnings from first-party games. like I said, I already ran a small example just looking at, say, if 1.8 million people bought the standard edition and 200,000 people, bought the premium edition, Xbox goes in with $84 million, right? Because your total is about $120 million from that transaction, right? Now, if you look at what PlayStation gets in this equation, they get $36 million. But their competitor just walked away with about twice that, close to twice that amount, if not more, actually. 36 million versus $84 million. Who would you want to be on this side of the transaction? If it was me, I'd want to be on the $84 million side of the transaction anytime, any day. Give it to me from a game that I already made money on years ago, that I've already broken even and profited and developed the player base. So now this $36 million fee is marketing because I have now introduced your players to a new taste, to a new item, to a new game that has now beaten your own game. So $36 million, which is a drop in the bucket for these companies when they're doing marketing for an old franchise, and I'm now cultivating new users within your ecosystem. Hence, when I show up with my Forza Horizon 6, I know that there is a guaranteed user base ready to jump on that wagon. Pun intended. Because when you kind of think about it, this is exactly what we've been talking about in terms of, the Trojan horse strategy and all of this stuff. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when you kind of think about it, it's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a Trojan horse strategy in a sense. I'll call it introducing customers to something that they haven't tried before. And in this particular instance and in this paradigm, you can already see that this is going to net and create a significant benefit for Xbox. It does have a benefit for PlayStation. That's the beauty of having a platform. People pay you platform fees, right? Well, another benefit of having a platform is if you launch your own product on the platform, you also gain, in my opinion, more users. And Xbox's platform is not just that platform that is designed only to gain third-party benefits. It's also designed to gain first-party subscription benefits from everybody with or without the console. So the Xbox gamer is now asking themselves a question: is Forza Horizon 6 going to come to PlayStation 5 at launch, or am I going to have to wait for it? And if they have to wait for it, that's fine. They'll wait for it, but they're still going to pay a lot of money for it. And that's also fine. Because let me tell you what's going on. If Xbox sat down and said, okay, we're going to bring Forza Horizon 6 as an exclusive to Xbox, they'd be hurting themselves in reality. Now, if they made it a proposition where, yeah, you get to play it and for an unknown amount of time, and a PlayStation user gets to wait for an unknown amount of time, that probably provides a proposition for them, as PlayStation does with its exclusives to PC, right? However, having the option of Game Pass, where the PlayStation user does not have to wait that long, nor do they have to buy an external console, now presents a bridge to the gap. Do you see what I mean? Because now they could say, you know what? If I get Game Pass Ultimate on my phone, on my tablet, you know what I mean? On my TV, I can play this game on my browser, on my computer. Now, I don't even need a gaming PC. You know what I mean? And I can get access to this game ahead of time. That's exactly why Xbox's proposition and them taking their games as, depending on the cadence and if they're older, to PlayStation starts to make sense, because it's marketing. Because the PlayStation gamer may buy a full copy or may not buy a full copy. Or they may come in via, subscription, and it all works out to their favor anyways. And I think PlayStation is in a position where now they've been rethinking heavily, but they're gonna have to rethink their business strategy across the board. And I think this is why you're seeing Helldivers 2 on Xbox. I strongly believe that that's the case. They're gonna go out there, whatever sales are gonna happen, and if Helldivers 2 sells 2 million units on Xbox or more, they're gonna take home a similar percentage. Now, it's not gonna be the same because that game is sold for less. But you see exactly the example that I mean. Just slash this number, 84 million, right? Take out the chunk in terms of, what the cost basis would be, and you'll see that PlayStation is they actually stand to gain money from Xbox. That's probably going to be funding some of their game, development. Do you see how that works? That's why these companies are now swapping platforms. Nintendo, you might be next. Peace out.